You know how everyone wishes that individual Pokemon turns were just way longer? No? Just me. Okay. You guys are not gonna like this video. Alright, if we want to figure out what the longest turn is, we're first going to have to define what we consider length. We're going to be using the Pokemon Showdown client for this, and we'll run the replay at normal speed and check the time of the turn, but we're also going to measure the number of separate notifications and messages written to the game log throughout the turn, just to get an idea of how many individual game actions actually take place. We're just going to call these messages from this point on. So, before we start making any big decisions, like choosing what Pokemon to use, figuring out what moves we're using, or if we should throw away our promising career in tech to become a Pokemon YouTuber, we can make some easy decisions without too much commitment. Obviously, we're going to want to make it a double battle, and it'll help if there's a weather event active, especially a sandstorm that will deal damage to our Pokemon at the end of the turn. We'll also want both sides to terrestrialize on that turn for just 2 more messages to up the count. Now it's worth looking at all the statuses and conditions a Pokemon can have that all have some sort of message or reminder once per turn. It's a good thing this random guy with no life already made a video detailing every single condition a Pokemon can have at once. Good thing I don't have to waste my time with that, because that video probably took several weeks of work to get done and probably was a hellscape, and probably the guy who made it probably never ever wants to do that again because that sucked. Surprisingly, very few statuses actually have an effect with some kind of message once per turn attached, and most are ones that deal some amount of damage, which might not be super useful to us. The statuses we might end up using are Confusion, Infatuation, Syrupy, Perishing, and damage dealing statuses like Burn, Leech Seed, Salt Cure, Whirlpool, and Curse. Finally, assuming we have the time to spend setting up, one more thing we can do to generate messages on our chosen turn, without committing to using any moves on that turn, is timing effects so they wear off at the end of the turn. Effects like Aurora Veil, Reflect, Light Screen, Mist, Gravity, and My Last Relationship all last exactly 5 turns and give some sort of notification when they wear off. Why the fuck did I write that? Because they all have the same timing, we won't be able to stack too many, but we'll definitely take anything we can get here. Alright, now to actually figure out what we're doing on the big turn. My first idea was inspired by a YouTube comment I had received on my All Conditions video, where a viewer mentioned that they were personally responsible for the removal of the Shared Power custom game mode on Showdown, due to them using some setup to force a semi-infinite turn and managed to crash the servers. Thank you for ruining it for the rest of us, viewer. Very cool. For those unaware, Shared Power makes all Pokemon on your team share all 6 abilities at once. My best guess as to the main enabler of this loop they managed to start is the Dancer ability. It lets any Pokemon who sees a dance move being used also use that move in addition to their own selected move for the turn. Unfortunately, the extra dances used from the ability don't activate the ability, so it doesn't actually cause an infinite loop. But if 4 Oricorio all use Quiver Dance, which results in each other Oricorio also using Quiver Dance, that's 16 uses of Quiver Dance in one turn. Quiver Dance has 4 messages, plus the 1 message for Dancer activating, so 1 Quiver Dance will generate 19 messages. That's 76 messages just from the 4 Quiver Dances. It's not an infinite loop, but in vanilla it's not bad. Unfortunately, as you might have noticed, it's maybe just not quite good enough though, because multi-hit moves exist. If you take a Pokemon that uses a not very effective multi-hit move like Tail Slap that hits 5 times on a Pokemon with an ability that activates every time it takes a physical hit that's also holding a Rocky Helmet, that's a message for the damage, a not very effective message, a message for the ability activating, and a message for the Rocky Helmet activating. That's 20 messages per use if you're counting all 5 hits of Tail Slap. And each Pokemon on the field could do that for their move for a total of 80 messages. Of course, why use a move like Tail Slap that hits 5 times when you could use Population Bomb, which hits 10 times? Worth noting that a Pokemon that lands 10 hits of Population Bomb on a target holding a Rocky Helmet will faint after 6 or 7 hits, depending on their HP total. If we give 3 of our attackers Agwav Berries and make sure our HP totals are nice and odd, we can up that number to 9 hits before fainting. I was really hoping that the Shell Bell item would activate for each individual hit of a multi-hit attack, but it unfortunately does not, so it doesn't help us here for either giving extra messages or keeping our Population Bomb attackers alive. It was at this point I realised before committing to this strategy or any other strategy and declaring it as the best and most optimal option, I should probably do a quick Google search to see if people have done this before, and if I'm even close to being correct. I found this video by Dawobblefet from 3 years ago, who managed a setup that caused a 20-minute turn on a cartridge Sword and Shield Wi-Fi battle by looping eject packs with sticky web and stalling in menus until the timer forced an option to be chosen. This strategy is really good on cartridge for stalling time and increasing the duration of a turn, but it doesn't generate more messages than my population bomb strategy and it can't be done on Showdown, so I initially dismissed it. A few days later though, while not even thinking about Pokemon, it hit me. We can do both. I'll explain. Eject Pack is an item that, when the holder has a stat lowered, is switched out for a Pokemon of your choice. If there's a sticky web on the ground, as soon as the Eject Pack holder is switched in, their speed is lowered and the item will activate and they'll be swapped out, and if that Pokemon is also holding an Eject Pack, they will also be switched out. And the loop continues until all the Eject Packs on the team have been used up. You can also set up other hazards for additional messages on each individual switch. You might be thinking, only have to sacrifice a use of Population Bomb to switch out a Pokemon to start the loop. And that's the beauty of it. People sometimes don't realize it, but when a Pokemon is knocked out and a new Pokemon is sent out to replace it, that replacement happens at the end of the turn, not the start of the next. We already know that at least one Pokemon on each side is going to be knocked out from the Rocky Helmet, so we're already able to just go ahead with the strategy without sacrificing anything. One final thing we can do to increase the length of our turns is to have all Pokemon faint by the end of the turn, or at least as many as possible. It'll be tricky to set up, but this is totally doable with our current setup. Alright, now that we know what we're doing, let's get to it. We're using not one, not three, but 2 whole Smeargles on both teams to be able to set up the final turn without having to waste turns swapping Pokemon out. You'll notice that nearly every other Pokemon on both teams have some sort of ability that activates on entering the battlefield and broadcasts a message to the log. This is so when they get sent out from the eject packs, we get an additional message per Pokemon. So, to get ready for our setup, there's 4 things we need to make sure of before we're able to swap into our 4 Smeargle and go for the big turn. We need to have both sides have a layer of spikes and stealth rock set up. We need all Pokemon holding eject packs who have enough HP to survive the entry hazards the first time they enter the battlefield on the big turn, but have low enough HP that the second entry will KO them. We need to make sure that all Smeargle have full HP despite switching in on hazards by using Healing Pulse and Wish. And we need to make sure that at least one Smeargle copies Goodraw's gooey ability before the Goodra swaps out. Now all Smeargle are switched in and healthy, each side sets up a layer of toxic spikes and a sticky web. One side then uses Reflect while the other uses Gravity. Both effects will wear off in 5 turns, so now we have 3 more turns to do any more setup necessary. In theory, this is where we would have both sides use Attract on the 2 opposing Smeargle, and also each side would also use Teeter Dance. You'll notice I didn't do that because the actual odds of successfully using all the moves we need to use through multiple Infatuation and Confusions is this low. So, can everyone just do me a favor and pretend we used those moves correctly, and we'll add them up to the message count at the end. Thank you very much. Now with all of our setup finished, let's get on with what we're all here to see. Start the timer. Like we said at the start, both sides terrestrialize to both give an additional message, but also to make sure the population bombs hit for not very effective damage. We need to make sure the Rocky Helmet Smeargle goes first, since the other 3 are going to be KO'd from the Rocky Helmet, and we need a target for the population bomb. This population bomb gives us 1 message for the initial attack, then for each hit we get a damage message, a not very effective message, and a gooey activation, and the subsequent speed loss. And then a message saying how many times the move hit, for a total of 42 messages on that 1 attack. Now the other 3 Smeargle all get to attack the Rocky Helmet holder. Keep in mind we're pretending all these Smeargle are confused and infatuated for additional messages. The 2 fully healthy Smeargle use not very effective population bombs with 6 hits, and they both eat Aguav berries to recover health to connect 3 more times for 9 total hits, each one with a message for damage, not very effective, gooey, speed drop, and Rocky Helmet. Overall, once all 4 Smeargle have used their population bomb, the message count is at 142, which is not bad at all so far. Now we have to switch in new Pokemon to replace the KO'd Smeargles, and we start eject pack looping. Each Pokemon is swapped in, takes damage from the hazards, gets slowed by Sticky Web, then swaps out. Once all 4 Pokemon on one side have been swapped out once, we send them out again to get KO'd by hazards, and then replace that Pokemon with another Pokemon that also gets KO'd. This continues until all Pokemon are knocked out, and we get 1 final message for the battle ending in a victory. So, with a final time of 4 minutes, 20 seconds and 59 milliseconds and a total message count of 289 messages, plus the extra 8 for Infatuation and Confusion, that makes our final total 297 messages. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support me and the channel, I have a Patreon link in the description. Thank you especially to Eamon Crawford, Sean Colgan and Zed the Man, as well as Avery Bunn, Frostfucks, Peter Clare Lomax, Where is Spacebar, and everyone else you see here.